Ethan Monroe had it all: money, power, and the love of Olivia Sterling. Olivia wasn't just his girlfriend. She was a force of nature. A self-made billionaire whose name alone could turn the tides of entire industries. From high-tech ventures to luxury real estate, her empire was vast. She didn't just thrive in the world of the rich and powerful, she owned it. And she had given Ethan everything. Her love. Her loyalty. Her influence. Yet, he threw it all away for a moment of weakness. He thought she wouldn't find out. But he was wrong. Olivia always knew, and she was never one to let betrayal go unpunished. If you have subscribed to this channel, welcome back, and if you haven't or happen to stop by, please do well to subscribe and get notified for more interesting stories. Now let's dive back into the story. It all started at a tech conference in Silicon Valley, where the future of innovation was on the line and the brightest minds in the industry gathered. Olivia Sterling, a self-made billionaire tech mogul, had already made waves with her groundbreaking innovations in AI and real estate technology. She was the woman in the room, always 3 steps ahead of everyone else. Ethan Monroe, on the other hand, was still climbing the ranks. He had inherited his company, Monroe Industries, but it was still a shadow of its potential. Ethan was sharp, ambitious, and charming, everything a woman like Olivia would usually avoid. He wasn't known for his intellect in the same way she was. Rather, he used his charisma and connections to navigate the corporate world. But that didn't stop him from spotting Olivia from across the crowded hall. He had heard her speak on stage about the future of real estate, and she captivated the entire room with her bold ideas. Olivia wasn't just intelligent, she had this quiet, magnetic aura that made people want to follow her, to be near her. Ethan was intrigued. After her speech, Ethan made his move. He approached her at the bar where she was having a quiet drink, surrounded by her usual entourage of investors and tech elites. Most people were too intimidated to engage with her directly, but Ethan had a confidence that came from his privileged upbringing. He saw an opportunity, and he seized it. "Miss Sterling," he said, extending his hand, a smirk playing on his lips. "I'm Ethan Monroe. I'm a huge fan of your work." Olivia looked up, her eyes assessing him for a split second before she shook his hand firmly. There was something about his arrogance, his unspoken challenge, that piqued her interest. "Is that so?" she asked, her tone neutral but curious. "I believe in the power of real innovation," he continued, his eyes sparkling. "And you're the only one here who seems to understand what's coming next." Her brow arched. "I thought you were here to network." "I'm here to meet the right people," he replied. "And you're the right person." Olivia chuckled softly, finding his audacity refreshing in a sea of sycophants. She liked that he didn't fawn over her like the others. They ended up talking for hours, about business, about their visions, about the future. She found him charming in his own way, though he wasn't nearly as polished as some of the men in her circles. Still, he had an energy she couldn't ignore. They exchanged numbers, and from there, their relationship grew. At first, it was casual, dinners, late-night talks about the future of tech, and playful banter about who had the better business model. Ethan was drawn to Olivia's intellect, her drive, and the way she could dominate any room she entered without breaking a sweat. He found himself completely enamored with her, her power, her ambition. Olivia, on the other hand, found Ethan interesting. He wasn't like the other men she was used to. He wasn't there just to impress her with his wealth or status. Ethan wasn't afraid to challenge her, to speak his mind even when it didn't fit her narrative. At first, she dismissed him as just another ambitious businessman trying to get close to her, but slowly, she began to appreciate his tenacity. What started as business admiration began to evolve into something more personal. Ethan made Olivia laugh in a way that few people could. He took risks, bold, reckless ones, and she found herself intrigued by how far he'd go to win, both in business and in life. He was impulsive, charming, and unafraid of rejection, qualities that, surprisingly, softened Olivia's usually guarded demeanor. As weeks turned into months, they began spending more time together. Ethan would show up at her office with lunch, uninvited but always welcomed. He'd charm her employees, make light-hearted jokes, and push her to loosen up in ways she hadn't allowed herself to in years. Olivia, in turn, began to show him sides of her that no one else ever saw, her vulnerability, her doubts, the pressures she carried as a woman in a man's world. It was an electric balance. Ethan admired her strength, while Olivia respected his ability to keep up with her, to push her to be better, and he never once seemed intimidated by her success. They were a pair that felt unstoppable, as though together, they could conquer anything. But even from the beginning, there was something about Ethan that Olivia couldn't quite trust. He was charming, too charming at times. There were moments when she felt like he wanted more from her than just a partnership, moments where his ambition seemed to run too deep, yet, she couldn't deny the way he made her feel, alive, driven, and, for once, not like the person who had to be the one in control of everything. Their relationship continued to grow, and it seemed perfect for a while. But in the back of Olivia's mind, there was always that nagging doubt. And when that moment of betrayal came, it shattered everything she had built with Ethan. The empire they could have created together fell apart. Ethan Monroe wasn't a fool. He knew Olivia Sterling was the most powerful, intelligent, and extraordinary woman he had ever been with. Being with her was like standing next to the sun, blinding, consuming, and impossible to ignore. But that was also the problem. As much as he loved Olivia, there was a dark, insecure part of him that couldn't handle being second. Olivia was the one people admired. Olivia was the one with influence. Olivia was the one who walked into a room, and the entire world seemed to pause. And Ethan? Despite being a billionaire in his own right, despite having charm and business acumen, despite the way the media painted them as the ultimate power couple, he was still living in her shadow. It started as a whisper in his mind. A question. What if I'm not enough for her? Then, it evolved. What if she doesn't really need me? And worst of all, what if I'm just another man in her life, and one day she'll discard me like she does failed investments? That fear festered. At first, Ethan fought against it. He worked harder, tried to prove himself, made bold business moves, took risks that could rival Olivia's. But every time he climbed higher, Olivia was already at the next peak, watching him from above. She never rubbed it in his face. She never belittled him. But that almost made it worse. She was untouchable. Unshakable. Unstoppable. And he? He felt like he was struggling to keep up, so when temptation appeared, he let himself fall. He had flown to Los Angeles for what was supposed to be a quick business meeting, something about expanding Monroe Industries into a new market. Olivia had been too busy to come. She was preparing for an international conference, securing deals worth billions, doing what she always did, winning. Ethan had told himself that one night alone in LA wouldn't change anything. But then came the after party. The event was filled with the usual suspects, investors, socialites, influencers, and women who thrived on being in the orbit of powerful men. And then there was her. Sophia Lane. A model turned aspiring actress. Stunning. Wild. The kind of woman who was hungry for attention. She wasn't in Olivia's league, no one was, but she had something different. Where Olivia was composed, Sophia was reckless. Where Olivia was strategic, Sophia was spontaneous. Where Olivia always knew, Sophia was unpredictable. And most importantly, she looked at Ethan like he was the most powerful man in the room. The drinks flowed. The conversation turned flirtatious. Ethan knew where it was heading, and he knew he should stop. But something inside him snapped. It wasn't about sex. It wasn't even about Sophia. It was about proving, if only for a night, that he was still the man. That he wasn't just Olivia Sterling's boyfriend, that he could still take what he wanted, without living in the shadow of a woman greater than him. And so, he made the mistake that would cost him everything. A private suite. Champagne. Secrets whispered in the dark. And by the time the morning light poured through the windows, the damage was done. He told himself it was just one time. That no one would ever know. But secrets never stay buried. And if there was one thing he should have known by now, Olivia Sterling always finds out. Olivia Sterling wasn't the type of woman who went looking for betrayal. She didn't have to. The truth had a way of finding her. It started with a whisper, an anonymous tip sent to her personal assistant's encrypted inbox. At first, Olivia ignored it. She had received baseless rumors before. Being a woman in power meant that people were always trying to shake her foundation, create chaos where there was none. But this time, something felt off. The message was simple: check Los Angeles. The Monroe boy has been sloppy. There was no name, no threats, no attempt to extort money. Just a warning. That's what made Olivia pause. Because whoever sent it, they weren't trying to take advantage of her. They just wanted her to know. And Olivia always listened when the universe gave her signs. Olivia wasn't the kind of woman to throw accusations without evidence. So she did what she did best. She investigated. A quiet call to her most trusted security specialist. A few discreet inquiries into Ethan's travel records. Access to hotel surveillance footage that shouldn't have been available to anyone. And then, the truth unfolded like a slow-motion car crash. She watched as Ethan arrived at his hotel alone. She watched as, hours later, Sophia Lane entered through the side entrance, avoiding the main lobby. She watched as Sophia left the next morning, wearing the same dress, her hair a mess, slipping into a waiting car. But it wasn't just the footage. There were credit card receipts. A bottle of vintage champagne charged to the suite. A careless text message Sophia had sent to a friend, one that Olivia's team retrieved with little effort: just spent the night with Ethan Monroe. He's even better in person. At that moment, Olivia felt something she hadn't felt in years. Not heartbreak, not anger. Amusement. Ethan had thought he was playing a game. He forgot that Olivia owned the board. She didn't explode. Didn't cry nor scream. No, that wasn't Olivia Sterling's style. She waited. She let Ethan come home, unaware that his world was already crumbling. She greeted him as usual, her smile perfectly in place, her touch gentle. And then, one evening, over dinner in their penthouse, she slid a small, black envelope across the table. Ethan frowned, confused. "What's this?" "Open it." Inside? Every single piece of evidence. The hotel footage. The receipts. The text messages. A full dossier on Sophia Lane, her connections, and even a record of other women Ethan had been too careless to hide. Ethan's face was drained of color. He swallowed hard. "Olivia, She raised her hand. Silence. Then she leaned in, her voice calm, almost gentle. "You should have known better." Ethan sat frozen, guilt and panic warring in his eyes. It was a mistake. I wasn't thinking. I love you." Olivia let out a soft laugh. Cruel and beautiful. Love? She tilted her head and walked away. Ethan Monroe woke up the next morning to chaos. His phone wouldn't stop buzzing. Messages. Missed calls. Emails. He rubbed his temples, groggy from the previous night's whiskey-fueled indulgence. He grabbed his phone and frowned at the endless notifications. Then, his assistant, Marcus, barged into the bedroom of his penthouse. "Sir, we have a problem," Marcus said, his voice tense. Ethan groaned, asking what the issue was. Marcus handed him a tablet, showing the financial reports. Monroe Industries stock had plummeted overnight. His personal accounts? Frozen. What the hell is this? Ethan muttered, sitting up, his heart pounding. Olivia Sterling pulled all her investments from the company, Marcus said grimly. That's over $500 million gone in an instant. And, she didn't stop there. Ethan's fingers tightened around the tablet as he scrolled through the reports. It wasn't just Olivia pulling out. Other investors, big names, had followed her lead. Banks were reevaluating their loans. His major business partners were backing out. Ethan breathed. He knew exactly who was behind it. Olivia wasn't just taking his money. She was erasing his legacy. That afternoon, his face was plastered across every major news outlet. Red Circle: Ethan Monroe, cheater, fraudster, and falling fast. Red Circle exposed: Monroe Industries CEO caught in a secret hotel scandal. Red Circle: Olivia Sterling cuts ties with Monroe, is he finished? The paparazzi hounded him the moment he stepped outside. Mr. Monroe, did you really cheat on Olivia Sterling? Are the allegations true that Monroe Industries is going bankrupt? Do you have a statement? Ethan shoved past them, his mind racing. He stormed into his corporate office, expecting to take control of the situation. Instead, he walked into an emergency board meeting. His executives were pale, whispering amongst themselves. Ethan, one of the board members, said coldly, "We need to talk." 2 hours later, Ethan walked out of the meeting with one horrifying realization. They were considering removing him as CEO. Days passed. Ethan fought. He tried everything: damage control, press releases, legal threats. Nothing worked. Olivia had anticipated every single move he made. Then came the final humiliation. The Sterling Foundation Annual Charity Gala. The biggest event of the year, where billionaires, celebrities, and politicians gathered under one roof. Ethan had planned to use the event to restore his public image. But Olivia had other plans. When she arrived, the entire ballroom went silent. Dressed in a backless emerald gown that shimmered under the chandelier lights, she was a vision of power and perfection. But the real shock? She wasn't alone. On her arm was Damian Lancaster, Ethan's biggest rival, a billionaire investor with twice Ethan's influence and none of his scandals. Ethan's stomach sank. People whispered. Reporters scrambled to capture the moment. And then, Olivia's eyes met across the room. She smiled. It was soft. Delicate. Lethal. She walked past him without a word. And in that moment, Ethan knew. He hadn't just lost her. He had lost everything. Subscribe to this channel for more interesting stories and don't forget to give this story a thumbs up.